Welcome to the Leverage Ledger. I'm Stephen Bielecki, the host of the show and founder of the Bookies. At the Bookies, we help business owners get clarity through tax-ready bookkeeping, peace of mind through CFO advisory, and leverage through expert consulting on AI-driven automation, all so they can scale a more efficient, profitable business while freeing up their time. On this show, I sit down with business owners and operators to unpack how they actually built their careers, what shaped them early, and what they're navigating now. And finally, how they're intentionally building towards the next phase of their future. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Karin Gadberry. Karin brings a unique operating perspective to leadership and growth. She spent nearly 2 decades coaching collegiate athletes, transitioned into the chambers of commerce, marketing, and consulting, and today plays a central role in business development and marketing for Mather Brothers, a major distribution company supporting large-scale events and venues across Arizona. She's also a co-builder of the Above Par Network, a network that I'm part of and is one of the fastest growing relationship-driven business communities in the region, focused on real connection, high-quality operators, and zero ego. And most recently, Karin completed the Institute for Organization Management, a rigorous 4-year leadership program focused on community impact, influence, and informed decision-making, an experience that directly shapes how she leads, connects people, and builds durable ecosystems today. Karin, thank you so much for being on today.
I'm super thrilled to be here. Thanks so much, Steve, for having me on your podcast today. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation.
Well, thank you. So you've spent nearly 2 decades as a collegiate coach. Looking back, what's one lesson from coaching high-performing athletes that business owners dramatically underestimate?
That's a really great question. And a lot of employers really look to hire student athletes or coming out of college. It's kind of funny that Enterprise is actually one of the largest employers of student athletes. And, I think there's this part that student athletes know and understand. And when they compete at a high level, that they have that discipline to them. And, when they get after, it's every day, it's every single day, it's nonstop. And not just from a standpoint of competing on the field or on the basketball court, but in the classroom, how they manage their relationships, right? You have to be very disciplined in everything that you do. And so I think that's really something that business owners, when they look at employees, is how well is that employee disciplined to stay on task and do the things that they're supposed to do and help to grow and elevate the company as a whole. And so, it all comes back to discipline, and high achievers know that part. So I think that's a really key element that separated those from who really excelled in that space and those who did not. So, yeah.
It's that competitive edge and drive and discipline I don't think ever leaves anybody.
Yeah, and you can't have the drive if you don't have the discipline. Right?
Mhm.
Like if you're going to be a driven person, there's certain things that you have to say no to. Right. And so whether you're the college athlete that, hey, you got invited to a party or something that's socially related that doesn't align with your academics or what you're trying to do athletically, sometimes you have to say no. And as a business owner, there are things you have to say no to. And I think sometimes business owners miss that part of it, that we do have to say no. Like we cannot say yes to everything. And when we do that, we put too much on our plate. And I know we even had a little bit of conversation too about like burnout. And, it ends up leading to burnout. So whether it's in athletics or in business, burnout is very much a key factor. And so, but you have to have that discipline to stay on track. So high achievers have discipline.
Agreed. I have to learn to say no more, that's for sure. So when you transitioned from athletics to the chambers and marketing consulting, which skills carried over seamlessly and which were harder to translate into the business world?
So I didn't know when I was in coaching and working in administration. So across my 17 years that I coached and I worked in college athletics, I worked in Division I and Division II and NAI and schools across different states. And I did not actually realize that everything we did as a coach or as an athletic administrator, when I was serving as an athletic director, even, it was all the same as in the business world. Everything, just like being a CEO and running and operating your company. And I didn't, you change out the word student athlete and you stick it with employees. You change out the word financial aid and you plug in payroll, right? So, we travel to games games are no different than, I don't want to say it from a competitive standpoint, but like, how are you going to compete in the market? Right? Like with your services, what are you going to do to compete and then to be successful? Right. So whether it's wins on the scoreboard or wins in your book, right? Like you want your clients to have, wins in their book so that they stay open and running. And so I didn't realize that those things were all the same. They were just different terms. And so I was really fortunate. How I ended up going when I retired in 2022, I had been introduced to the Gilbert Leadership Program. And when I went into that program and I learned all about, the city or the town of Gilbert and different services and just how everything operated. And I was like, wow, this is like really cool. And I met a lot of different folks. And of course, when it came to the project and they wanted to fundraise money, who did they go to? They were like, well, the coach knows how to do it. So I led the campaign with my classmates. There was 23 of us, and we needed to raise funds for the Friends of the Needy at the St. Anne's Annex building in Gilbert. And I put together an entire campaign for us. And this was right after, COVID. So I had started the program in 21. And we raised 15 in like 45 days. And it was, super great because they serviced families and stuff. And so that caught everybody's attention. And they were like, who is this? And where did she come from? And so Sarah at the chamber then was like, hey, I think, we're interested in, if you'd be want to continue in Gilbert leadership after it continues on. And they have like a board or steering committee. So I was like, sure. So I got conned into serving on the committee, and I still serve on it today. And it's a great conning, like, so don't get me wrong, but 5 years later, there's a lot of different aspects that go into it, but I've been able to proudly serve in that arena to get exposed to all the different areas. And I didn't actually realize because of that, then it led to the position at the chamber doing business development and engaging with the entire membership there, which then led to IOM, as you mentioned, and engaging it with the US chamber. And so even though I don't work at the chamber anymore, there's still huge value in that program and in the business world. And there's a lot of different principles that can be applied. So there's 96 hours to complete it. And then if you want to go on and complete for your CAE, you can in that association and chamber space. But it was a fantastic platform that then led me into the marketing space. And so then that's how I met Leanna. Then I went and worked for Leanna doing the digital marketing space. And, I didn't knew nothing about digital marketing. So she was like, marketing. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, just go with it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So, and then through that part, that's when Gadberry Consulting started, and my partnership with Frank at APN and doing the different parts with Above Par Network and, and then which led to Mather Bros. So that's how it all transitioned across, and it's all interconnected. So, being able to connect all these different dots led to all of these fantastic people in the community and just being able to connect everything together. So I do think that, that is my wheelhouse.
Once you show value in one aspect of things, you could see how well it can translate to other aspects of your life or community or business. And I think that you've done that really well. I'm curious if there was ever one particular moment that you realized that you had a real strength for connecting people and not just managing tasks, because you seem to be a great connector of people, as that's how we've connected.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a defining moment, but a lot of people, and maybe some of that comes from like the Breakfast of Champions that I do with APN. And when I came up with that concept, it actually comes from when I was coaching with my teams. And it's really providing a platform because at the end of the day, they're only going to be a student athlete for the 4 years. And what you see on TV and NIL and all of that, that's the top 1%. There is 99%, which whether it's the NCAA or, community college, the NAI, there are hundreds of thousands of student athletes out there participating, and they're learning all of those key components that every employer out there wants to hire. And so, when we take it away from what we see on TV, there is this power that comes with how do I help them to be successful when they walk and graduate out of here? Because at the end of the day, that's what my goal and purpose was. Softball was a means to get them to their next 40 years of life. And whether or not their degree, it hangs on my wall, it's hanging up behind me, my jersey and my degree both hang next to each other. They always have, because softball was my means to get to my education that I knew was going to propel me for the rest of my life. Sure, I could have continued on to play, professionally, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be the end all be all. So
Hmm.
how do I, connect these different dots? And so one of the ways that I did it was through this concept of bringing in business owners, business community to come help and educate my players. So it wasn't necessarily something that was done across the athletic department. Some schools do it, they do it a lot more now. But
Hmm.
during my time period, I took a special extra time to do that with my team. I would take practice time because I wanted them to be the best rounded people that they could be. And in the end, I felt that if they were all around better people, that they would automatically be better players because, there's so much more to it than X's and O's.
Hmm.
So when I would connect all these different dots and then I watched my players move on and be successful in whatever career that they wanted to have that be. And, so it's really great to see some of them who are lawyers and doctors and, some who own their own businesses to, worked at large corporations and, so it's really an amazing thing to see people. And I love the fact that I get to help build those connections.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, you're not just preparing the best athlete, which you are, but you're also preparing them for the future and creating those life lessons that comes is pretty naturally out of sports of taking your medicine and getting better and learning what it takes to get better and being disciplined and focused and growing as a person instead of just growing as an athlete, which can be done side by side. So
Yeah,
that's
it crosses into the business space. I mean, how many of your clients then they need a connection to something else with their business to help them to
hmm.
propel and be, successful? So those are the things that I really like to do with Mather Bros right now. Those are the things that I did with Bellevue. Then how do we engage APN and how do we take those businesses and make those connections? Because when high tides rise all ships and when one is successful and we can all be successful and there's plenty enough out there, it's just finding your lane and finding the right fits, right? And for,
Hmm.
probably every, when I would recruit students to play, I would have to for one position, I would have to start with 10 people just to sign one. And so how did I minimize that number of not having that much work to do? And so I think that translates into the business community. How do you find those right clients that you want to work with? How do you find those vendors that you're looking to partner with and that make the most amount of sense? And so it's totally interconnected and not spinning your wheels, right? Nobody wants to spin their wheels. So, but you got to put in the work and it goes back to the discipline.
That's why you don't want to spin your wheels. You want to get the work done, but you also want to get back to what you enjoy and your family and your friends, and that's the hard part. And you spoke about APN, and so that's above par network for somebody who may not be listening, which we're both a part of, and I'm really grateful for it. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. It's different, and I have my own thoughts on why it's different. But from your perspective, what does make above par network fundamentally different from a traditional networking group, and why does that difference matter right now?
So I think people get tired of the same concept all the time, right? Like, is every happy hour the same? Is every lunch mob the same? And so how do you manipulate it at the end of the day to show, hey, look, I don't want to miss this opportunity. If a concert comes into town and that artist isn't going to be back for another year, there creates this fear of missing out. And some people are okay with missing out, but if it's something that is really becomes passionate to you and you know that that's the demographic that you're looking for, it's really important that we project that out. So one of the things, Frank, my business partner, so we've only been partners for about 2 years now, and he started it in 2019, but we do it through connecting through golf is one of the ways. And like yourself, you don't golf, and which is totally
Terrible at
fine.
it.
It's okay, right? It's totally It's totally okay. You don't have to golf to be a part of it. Happy hour and headshots, right? That only
Hmm.
comes around in January. So we partner with a professional photographer to come in, and those folks that are looking for that headshot to put in their emails, right? Like, how important is it that, somebody sees your face on an email so that then the first time that you're meeting them for coffee, you're not like wandering around the coffee shop, right? Trying to figure out who it
Hmm.
is. And then you're awkwardly like, hi, am I meeting with you? Like, so I always want my photo to be up on that because there's so many visual people, right? And then you want to know, hey, I've seen you before. I've heard your name. How many times do we not remember people's names? And so you put the face to the name. So it all coincides together. So it's really super important that we have, something like that too. And so we kick off the year with it, right? We've had other, on the golf side, the Ryder Cup was a huge hit. We sold out that event in 27 minutes. Of people fighting for spots. And we had a draft party. At what point in, people's lives were they like NFL style red carpet, when were you ever drafted? And so we had an entire draft night, food and drink and, just people coming together. We had a gallery. So people who didn't play golf, they came to show up and watch their friends get drafted. And so just lots of different ways to engage. And then
Hmm.
really on the business side, so I run the Breakfast of Champions series. There's 6 of those. And none of this has anything to do with politics. And I think in today's landscape, I think that people are looking to kind of disengage from that. And
Hmm.
so we don't have that political aspect. There is a time and a place for all of it. The chambers do a fantastic job of it. Same way with, weekly meetings. We don't do weekly meetings. So we put on different events for business owners, business development people, and even social members that can come in and engage at that event. But
Hmm.
if we do something every single week, right, similar to like a referral team or like a BNI, it begins to get mundane. And
Hmm.
so we don't want those every week commercials. That's a great space. And if people want to do it, that's fantastic. There's still that opportunity out there. We want people to reimagine what that looks like. And the other side sector of APN is that because we do this on the side, and this is not our full-time jobs, right? I work at Mather Bros full time. We look to different ways or avenues that we can provide marketing opportunities for businesses and make the connections that way. Branding the different businesses, connecting other businesses to other businesses, which leads to more success. And so that's
Hmm.
really what the purpose behind it is. So we have that Breakfast of Champions. We have the business development lunches, which you haven't been invited or come to yet because like it comes about every other month as well. And so we keep them small in nature so that we can have really high level conversations. And so that's really what makes us different in comparison to a lot of other groups. And, our basic business membership is $175 for the year. So it's not a monthly occurring fee. We want to keep things affordable and we want folks to collaborate. We love to see businesses within the network collaborate their own events on together, work together. Like, can't say it enough. High tides rise all ships.
Couldn't agree more. What really gravitates me to it is the fact that it's, first of all, just good people all trying to do good business, people that you like, respect, and trust. But more importantly, it takes that time commitment off it of, hey, we are doing this. And if you would like to be a part of it, we'd love to have you be a part of this. But and provides that platform in fun ways that allow you to kind of also relax as a business owner because I do think the professional development is so necessary. Those 30-second commercials that they do, all that, it's so important to have that and do that. But at the same time, I think the ability to have it as we're not going to ding you if you don't show up. We'd love to have you because we want you to be as involved as you want. I think that is just so important because as business owners, it's hard to find time. It's hard to find that extra hour, half hour in a week, drive there and back. And it's not that you don't want to be involved and benefit from it, personally or as a business, but it's a big time commitment. So being able to have that ability and be involved when you can is great. And then, one of the things that fortunately I had to miss this event, but I got the T-shirt which you sent to me, and I opened it. I was looking at it. It's just really funny. It says, "I'm not drinking, I'm networking." Like for me, that's awesome. It's just a lot of fun. And I think it speaks to is it's like, hey, we're having a good time doing what we know is proper for all of us in networking and working together and trying to be connectors of people. I love it. I think it's great. And I'm curious, as you think about your consulting work and with APN, what are different patterns that you might be saying in today's businesses, some of the challenges they might be having or some of the opportunities that are coming up and how they might be adjusting to those?
You know, a lot of people kick off the start of the year and then we get really super excited through quarter one. And then all of a sudden, quarter two hits. It's the summertime, right? As we finish up quarter two and vacations or different things happen. I really think a critical moment for businesses is what is the plan of action in quarter three, really? And how are you planning for Q3? Because
Interesting.
especially down here in Arizona, as a lot of folks vacate, right, out of the heat or
Hmm.
different things, and they're like, "Oh, I know it's gonna be a bad summer," or they expect that downturn. Okay, so what are you doing in quarter 3 that's going to make the difference
Mm,
to set up quarter 4, but then to plan for quarter 3? So what are the key components that you're doing in quarter 2 so that maybe quarter 3 is not as bad? So, one of the things that I spent a lot of time when I was at De Bellevue before coming to Mather Bros is I knew that things would slow down during the summer. So I intentionally spent a lot of time, like if you saw my social media or any event, I literally spent 60 days of everywhere. It was like, Karen, you are everywhere. And 100%, I was. I did that on purpose because I wanted to make sure that I was in front of everybody. So it wasn't the time period that I was necessarily going on vacation. So I was going to make it at a point that I was going to be in front of everybody, right? Basic principles of marketing tell you got to be in front of somebody that 4 to 6 times every single month, right? How are you doing that? So I was like, well, I'm going to intentionally put that on auto. Like, I'm not just gonna make this assumption that because Steve, you and I connected back in January or February, right? That matters in July. No, I'm gonna
hmm
make sure that June, July, and August leading up to the year end, based on then where somebody's business is at, right? That I have set myself up for success. So I had a plan of action that probably wasn't leading necessarily to direct sales at that moment, but I know that it takes time to develop it. And so, probably my best piece of advice to a business out there is what are you doing to plan during your slow season so that when your heavy season is going on, whether that is Q1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but what are you doing to make sure that you're hitting each one of those key points? And so, identifying where that's at first is really the most important. That's my little nugget of information out there, but I just know that it dials back quite a bit during the
Yeah.
summer here, those 60 days. And so how am I really vamping up so that then I can be prepared for when things swing back? But I think there'll be some challenges here in 26 for a lot of different folks. So staying on the forefront and staying top of mind. A lot of businesses like to cut their marketing expenses when times get tough, but how do you get new
Mm,
business if you're not out there? So, that's usually the number one avenue that gets cut, and I'm not just talking about digital marketing, I'm talking about marketing in general. So I tend to hit that harder if I know that if I have a feeling or an anticipation, I tend to hit it harder.
yeah, it's like an ROI, and it's funny that you kind of mentioned the slow season coming from Mather Brothers, an ice company. I imagine they get
Mhm.
super busy during the slow season, so it's kind of funny and backwards. So it's I think very intelligent, especially from the consulting point of view. For most other businesses, it is a very challenging time because there's not a lot of people here, and you have to
Mhm.
anticipate for that. And if you're not planning for that, then you're for us, we do a lot of cash flow planning. And if you're not looking at that cash flow and seeing those trends, that makes it for a very stressful time. So I think that's incredibly an intelligent piece of advice for any business owner, especially
And
located
for
here or elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point on that bookkeeping side, yeah, really being prepared and really working with your team surrounding you, right? Like, who
Hmm.
are those folks, your bookkeeper, your accountant, anybody that's helping you through that process, they have to make those connections in so that then they're prepared. But it is funny that you mentioned that, yes, the slow season for most people is during the summer, but for Mather Bros, it 100% is, exhausting during the summer.
That
Uh, but what is it that they did, right? My first project coming in, was to entirely revamp, and we just debuted out the new website, so that then everything is centralized in one spot. You can take payments. We'll be launching out a hiring portal, because right now is the time to do that. So that's where my focus is now. And, one of the things that people don't realize that they do is snow. So we're really busy with the snow during Christmas or holiday times, right? Starting
sure.
in, Thanksgiving time period all the way through pretty much now. That will actually kick up in March and April. That folks who want to get on next year's calendar, right? So
Mm,
now,
mhm.
not just here in the Phoenix area, but over in Barstow and Lancaster in California, and then up in the Nevada, Las Vegas area. So those are the things that I'm working on that are actually for next year, but because of the slow time is right now, those are the things that
Mhm.
we want to do. So, yeah, what is it that those companies are doing during their slow time so that it eases some of the pain during their, really, really big times?
Yeah. It's funny, I have to say it, no business like snow business, I guess.
No business like the snow business. We chill over here, That's
Makes
always
for a lot of
staying
fun.
chill.
The other thing I just want to touch on and move on, but you also talk about that advertising cost and how important that is, because really what that is, and the way I see it is investing in your business. It is something that should have a clear ROI to it. And a lot of business owners have a hard time being able to understand the time delay from spending the advertising dollar and the return on that and the client acquisition cost that comes along with that. So I think that's super important what you said of like, hey, you might be slow right now, but what were you doing 2, 3 months ago that potentially caused this? And if you're slow, are you really shutting that funnel off? Is that smart for the future of the business? And it's tough. I mean, I get it. As a business owner, it's a constant struggle of how much do you invest versus how much do you grow, and
Mhm.
operations, sales side is a consistent struggle for any business. But I think it's very important to bring up. And, one of the things I did want to talk to you about too, kind of talking about balancing, is you balance a lot. You balance this consulting role. You're part of the chamber. You're managing your studies with that. You're building and growing a network. You're working full time. What systems or personal habits do you have that allow you to sustainably do that without burning out?
So everybody, that's like the golden nugget of questions that everybody wants to know. Karen, how do you do all this? I actually don't. It's not overbearing to me. And I kind of feel like that comes from that athletics background. It is a unique and special place that I've found. And I didn't realize it when I went into coaching or participating at a high level in athletics. It is your life. And 25 years, softball was my life in every capacity, and I didn't understand anything different. And so, whether
Mhm.
I was training all the time and I went from high level training straight into coaching, as soon as I graduated, I went straight into coaching Division 1. And, there's a lot to managing a Division 1 program. And it all felt the same. So I didn't understand. I honestly don't know. And so I just carried the same thing with me. So I get up every single day and, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm already at the gym, working out, doing those kind of things. I look to connect lots of different ways. I utilized Gilbert Leadership, for instance, as I made different connections. This is just one example that, through Gilbert Leadership, I met Trinity with Ascend, who's the CEO of Ascend, which is part of one of the leaders in campaigns of heat relief, for instance, in the Gilbert and Chandler area. So that connection comes from, my involvement with Gilbert Leadership that then leads to, hey, I'm working at Mather Bros. They have different logistical issues in the hydration space as they look to have all these respite centers around, the valley and service that not just water, but so now that I work at Mather Bros, right? Like, well, now these two worlds connect and collide. And so it's not two separate things. It's actually maneuvering all together, right? So lots of different businesses have websites or are looking to do marketing things. And really in college athletics as a coach, you are the brand. When you go back and you think about, although he doesn't coach anymore, okay? When you think about Alabama football, Nick Saban. comes to
Hmm.
mind, right? You go before Nick Saban, you're like Bear Bryant, right? So this has nothing to do with whether or not someone is an Alabama fan, right? So it goes to do with that program is associated with that person. That person has a brand. And so it's all interconnected. So if you see Nick Saban on TV, you automatically make all of these different connections. And so it's not really actually separated.
Hmm.
It all is combined all together. So I'm able to navigate this. And sure, there's some different moments where there's some events where it's like, I could just really not be here right now. I am actually introverted by nature. You would be like, nope, I don't believe that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've seen you
But
out and about.
right. But I will say this, when you see me out and about, you probably notice that I'm always at the beginning when you show up to a networking event. So I'll be at the door, greeting people, taking some different
Mm,
photos, right? Talking to everybody. Then I actually disappear. So you may find me in one of the corners where I'm just like kind of regathering my energy. And
hmm.
then as the event is actually closing and moving away, like the night is ending, you'll actually see me back at the door to greet people, to say goodbye and thank people for coming. But that's how I have to navigate it so that I don't exhaust all of my energy. And I've learned to do that. So that's just one of the little tricks that I use as I'm out and about and everywhere. So,
Yeah, that's funny. I think anybody like that would have to have your own tricks to work through a lot of these things. And yeah, that's an interesting thing, especially at the beginning, because then everybody sees you. They know you're there. You've gone out of your way to say hi, which you've done to me when I first came. Is you went out of your way to
Mhm.
introduce yourself, which is that non-extroverted or is that extroverted characteristics. It's funny because at that time I was feeling very introverted, and I think some of us will kind of go wax and wane with those feelings. But as a business owner, it's kinda what you have to be. Uh,
Or you go find someone who could do it for you.
Also correct, right?
Yeah.
But usually you need to build up a little revenue to find somebody to pay somebody to do it for you, right? So
Mhm.
at some point, everybody, there's a book I really like. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, in which he
Interesting.
talks about that and, just the part that you're always selling, right? You're always doing that, whether it's my 2-year-old and trying to get her to go to bed last night or trying to figure out what we're doing this weekend. You kind of know what you want to do. You might be talking about it, but there's a strategy to it. And you know your spouse
100%.
better than others, right? So I always find that kind of funny of like, yeah, you could, but eventually, but it does start somewhere. It does, you have to have
Mhm.
that somewhere within yourself to do that. And it's actually interesting to transition to the next question, which is what you consider the future of professional networking to be. Because as AI and automation and all these things are kind of coming, a lot of people will try to circumvent that. I think a lot of people will try to avoid. I mean, I started my career in doing door to door sales for ADP and payroll, and for me that was very challenging, especially as somebody that I felt was introverted. So it's I think for most people, it's an easy thing to cross off the list and say, okay, well, I can pay more to do advertising, pay more to do this or that. Professional networking, I think, is so important, especially for services businesses like ours, where it's necessary. You're only as good as your network. I feel like. So I'm curious how you see as this transition with the advent of AI, automation, all this stuff. Where do you see the future of professional networking growing within that?
AI is only as good as the user. At the end of the day. And, I don't think it's going to replace human interaction. And I think we saw those aspects during COVID when everybody thought, "Oh, this is like super great. Now I'm just going to be at home." And, even the introverts then got to a point where they were like, I have to be around people, you know? And so I don't think that the human interaction part is going to change. I do think how people navigate it in terms of, can I utilize these services to be able to add to my follow up, right? So maybe you're still looking at, I'm only going to make, 3 connections. I actually go to a networking event only looking to make 3 connections because I want them to be
Smart.
meaningful connections. People still want to do business with folks that they know, like, and trust. And so they
Hmm.
can still trust you if you have AI or if you have some sort of automation system, because then we are putting processes into place to streamline streamline. So, it makes things so much easier, but at the end of the day, there is still a connection factor that happens, right? And
Hmm.
so, human behavior tells us in the digital space, even if I meet you in person, I'm still going to look at your social media and I'm still going to look at your website. Other part, somebody recommends you, "Hey, you should really talk to Steve over at the bookies," right? Like, they are going to look at your website and they're going to look at your social media before they even have a conversation with you. If those 2 things don't align, they won't meet with you. So or they're less likely to trust you,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So if I meet you in person and then I go and you haven't done anything to your website, there's a photo of you from 20 years ago, right? Because this does
Yeah.
exist, okay?
Yeah.
Because somebody doesn't want to admit that they've aged, right? And so, it's okay. It's all a part of the process, right? And so this is why updating information. Well, are you really relevant now at this point? So as times and, technology continues to increase, and so with your, bookkeeping or your fractional CFO services, what is it that you're doing that then is keeping up so that that business says, "You know what? Steve, you know what you're doing. You're able to keep up with the tax codes much quicker, right? That's why I know I can depend on you." So I don't actually think that any of it is going to change. I think that making meaningful connections, right? So that's why I say, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 6 months, people still want to do business with those that they know, like, and trust. I mean, we ran out an automated system for phone calls, right, with APN. Does that mean that people now can't trust us because we have an automated system that if you call in and then you can find out versus saying, "You know what? I don't want to bother Karen just to because I can't find this event that I thought that they mentioned and I'm not really navigating on Facebook or, I'm just going to call in really fast because I'm in the car, right? So I can't go to the website. I'm in the car, so I can punch the button and then ask our virtual assistant to run through the events." That's right. They had, that the Masters is coming up on the Saturday of, April 11th, right? Like that's when those signups aren't ready for it, right? So we're actually making your life easier because we implemented a new process that's automated, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you can't trust us then at that moment because lack of trust, then we don't want to do business, whether it's in the networking space or with current clients that we're using or prospective clients. So I think that it's really networking is going to become even more important. I really think human interaction is actually going to become more important.
I couldn't agree more, and I think you alluded to it with COVID. We saw how people react when they kinda get into those silos and what happens, and I think people over time now, these past 5 years or whatever it is now, have realized that, and I think it's that much more important. Plus, for me, it's kinda, it's refreshing when I get to go to these events because as an accountant, I spend a lot of time in front of a screen just like this all day, and sometimes the only people I see are my daughters and my wife,
Mhm.
and that's okay, but it's refreshing to be able to go to events like this, talk to other people, even if there's other accountants involved because we're able to talk about our days, which is nice, so I
I
couldn't agree
love that
more.
you just I love that you just mentioned meeting with other accountants. And so I know that we had kinda talked about, like, what different things, like, excite that are coming up, right, with APN, and, that part of the Breakfast of Champions, but then also leading into our business development lunches, but one of the things in particular is, and we're just calling it champion circles, but 3 separate circles are going to meet up on March 19th, and so the 3 separate circles, there's a space that's for real estate, so it's all industry specific. Real estate,
Mm,
mortgage, lending, right? Anything that involves in that space, and that's gonna be led by Patrick, who you know, and then
great.
Corey, who you also know,
Yes.
Corey is going to lead a general business, a trades business circle so that our trades businesses can get together, right? And then we have our third circle, which is the banking and finance and your area, banking, finance, and insurance, right? Connecting in with those individuals, right? So, directly to your point, like doing more things like that where we can bring industry professionals all together.
Mhm.
I just think that you guys all want more connections. I mean, Patrick talked to me about that. He's like, I want to know more attorneys because if it's something that I can't service for my client, I want to be able to make that recommendation or that referral over because I want to ensure that they get taken care of. And I think some people don't pay attention enough to that. And that is a fundamental difference of APN. We want to
Absolutely.
collaborate at the top. And so, yeah, mark your calendar for March 19th. So it is limited because we wanna make sure that you have gauging conversations, right? And so
Of
you're gonna
course.
see more of that come more events that are associated with business development specific and putting folks in the right rooms, which is a key. It has to be the right room. If it's not the right room, then you're like, "This is not a good use of my time."
And that, yeah, because like we said, that the time is one factor, and one of the things that separates APN is that idea of okay, there's already an accountant, that's fine. Actually, at the past headshots event, I was talking to one for a little bit, and it was just nice to kind of talk shop for a little bit, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes you're always even outside of that, we have our own little professional networks that we do seek a little mentorship because as you
Right.
said, high tide rises all ships, right? It's being able to help it. Okay, I haven't worked with this specific type of industry before, and there's a nuance maybe that I'm not familiar with that I can be able to brainstorm with someone. I think it's super important. Plus, just connecting with more people and being, I think, as people realize, you want to be a little bit more specialized as time goes on. So yeah, you know what, this client, they're a great person, but they're maybe not, I might not be the perfect fit for them, but they might be because that's their bread and butter. And I think it's nice to have that referring relationship as well as a professional referring relationship outside of that. So the fact that APN doesn't limit it to say, okay, we already got our bookkeeper, we already got our fractional CFO, and you must be one of the two. And not, it's, hey, we're just connecting people. You can figure it out. And it just gives a good platform for that. Unfortunately, I have to find a way to wrap this up because this has been as enjoyable of a conversation as I anticipated, if not more. So, for anyone who's listening that wants to learn more about you or get involved with Above Par Network or any one of your ventures, whether it's consulting or Mather Brothers, where's the best place for them to find information about any of those, including yourself?
So yeah. So at Above Par Network, that's just aboveparnetwork.com, and people can look up all the information there. Mather Bros is really easy, matherbros.com. My email is Karen. I'm Karen with the I. I'm not like the internet Karen, although I work in that space. But just yeah, just Karen at matherbrosinc.com. And then yeah, on the consulting sides, it's GoGadberry.com. So happy to connect with any and everybody and, see how we can help everybody grow and be successful.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you being on today and taking the time out of your very busy schedule and being such a
No, I
great
appreciate
guest.
you letting me come on. So I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and especially on March
Absolutely.
19th. You're going to
So, anyone that's listening, thank you for listening to the Leverage Ledger. If you've enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe, share it with others that you think would get value out of it and help us grow the show. And if you or someone you know would be a great fit to join us for future conversation, we'd love to hear from you. And you can go onto our website to fill out our nomination form. Karen herself has filled out many nomination forms for some just incredible people that we've had on that are going to be spanning several episodes. So I can't thank Karen enough for that. But that would be at thebookies.com, THEBOOKEASE.com. And then there's a whole bunch of free resources for small businesses. We're trying to really build up an education platform for those small businesses and getting through those initial startup phases and growing your network in ways like this. And so please visit us there and we'll connect next time. Thank you.
Thank you.